Okay, the outlook for growth REITs and infrastructure-related real estate is very strong. Life science, so biotechnology, e-commerce logistics, cold storage, data centers, telecommunications, and clean energy infrastructure are all part of the sectors of real estate that are benefiting today from a more socially distant world. Life science, I guess, maybe perhaps the most obvious in a pandemic scenario as we have today, has been a huge beneficiary as governments spend more money to develop vaccines and produce those vaccines and research diseases and whatnot. And so life science right now is probably at the leading edge of the most tremendous amount of demand today. There's a very clear evidence that countries will want to and need to develop their own life science capabilities rather than relying on foreign counterparts. And so I think you'll see a greater demand of life science outside of kind of the core markets that you typically see life science in, of San Francisco, Boston, and London, and parts of Canada to the rest of the world. And so that's one of the trends that we're watching. The transition to e-commerce, as we're all largely locked in our homes and working from home, there has been a great acceleration of the long-term trend of online shopping and buying online. And in fact, today we're at about $340 billion in just the US alone of US sales. And the online piece of that is accelerating to what we expect to be almost 25% within the next 4 years. This might even be pulled forward further as a result of COVID and all of the quarantines and work from home. Furthermore, logistics and e-commerce has opened up to more categories that we really didn't expect from a retail perspective before, so such as grocery. There's been a greater adoption of online grocery, which has meant an increase in demand for things like cold storage. And in fact, in Japan, the J-REITs that are specifically investing in the logistics space today have raised more capital thus far this year through primary offerings of shares than all the J-REITs have in any year previously combined, to tell you just kind of how hot that market is. Work from home is making the data center the new office building. As we're spending much more time at home, and there's lots of questions about whether or not employees will ever, in full force, go back to the office, as some of their work that they could do at the office is being supplanted by work from home. Data centers are really picking up a lot of that excess demand because of the connectivity back to the office and so forth. And so while the office market and the retail market are under a little bit of pressure as a result of COVID and as a result of work from home, and as a result of the quarantines, these other segments of the real estate market are actually benefiting. 5G and the telecommunications, cell phone technology continues to expand. And in fact, here in the US, the next 6 to 12 months should look very good for the telecom space, the tower REITs in particular, because of the transition to 5G will really start getting going. We've been expecting it and anticipating and planning for it the last several years. But for the first time, Apple should have a device that is 5G capable a little bit later on this year. So that should very much fuel demand across that spectrum. We expect there will be tremendous spending by the carriers to build out their networks of 5G. And then just lastly, from a regional perspective, those parts of the world that have dealt with COVID better, specifically Asia, Japan, China, Korea, and so forth, should rebound faster. And as a result, their economic activity should be better. And so as we think about tilting the geographical exposure of the portfolio, even within the growth REIT area, we're focused more on Asia today than we have been in the past. And we're mindful of risks in Europe, specifically around Brexit and a resurgence of COVID. And then in the US, we're very much kind of focused regionally, continually to have a lot of weight on the West Coast, and mindful of some of the more East Coast weight specifically around New York City and specifically in office. So it's a good outlook. It's a positive outlook for the growth REIT market. I do believe that the growth REITs will materially continue to outperform the broader REIT market. And if the broader REIT market, rough numbers, should produce a 6 to 8% total return, kind of on an annualized basis, I think that the growth REIT infrastructure space can easily do another 300 basis points on top of that. So call it a high single digit to low double digit sort of return, given the growth profile is materially better than that.